I was talking to my friend who has experienced childhood trauma. We started the conversation with him saying he realized he needed to accept what happened to him because he couldn't change it, or the way he behaved as a consequence of his trauma. He mentioned how he recognized he had repeated his trauma over and over again and he didn't understand why. I explained to him that this was called repetition compulsion. Repetition of a behavior will ultimately result in mastery. The word compulsion, however, implies an unconscious impulse against our will. An example of repetition compulsion that is not related to trauma is how children learn language and their carers' behaviours. Our carers' behaviours have benefited their survival, so from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense that we as children learn them. Additionally, it takes far less energy to mimic and copy their behaviours than learn new ones. The problem is that as an unconscious endeavour, we are also prone to learn maladaptive behaviours that are counterproductive to our well-being, for example, being quick to anger. Repetition compulsion related to trauma is an attempt to gain mastery over our traumatic experience. Mastery might imply creating a better outcome or integrating the experience into consciousness. However, by definition, trauma relates to an experience we have found overwhelming, and when we are overwhelmed, we rely on coping mechanisms to moderate the stressful effects of our experience. Dissociation is a coping mechanism which reduces the effects of the experience by unlinking the cognitive aspects of the experience with the emotional counterparts. The cognitive aspects are related to mental processes and functions. So it could be the memory of the experience, our perception of the experience, the reasoning of the experience, and the decision making. This unlinking might, for example, sever the memory of the experience with the emotions and feelings from the experience. Dissociation is a spectrum. On the one end, you have absorption and imagination, where you're, say, for example, reading a book and you're just disconnecting from the world. In the middle, you have depersonalization and derealization, which are altered states of self-awareness and self-identity. With depersonalization, you're detached from your body and your thoughts. And with derealization, you are detached from your reality, your surroundings, and the world. On the far end of the spectrum is amnesia and identity fragmentation, where you just don't remember anything of the experience. Here's an example of a repetition compulsion where a woman is dissociated from her trauma, and I'm reading it from a paper by Bowens et al., which was written in 2010. A woman who was sexually abused as a child sexualizes her relationships with men, having multiple casual encounters and no emotional investment from her partners. Her sexual behavior repeats the trauma in a behavioral sense while preventing emotions from surfacing during sexual encounters, thereby avoiding conscious awareness of the link between her past abuse and the distressing emotions arising from the abuse. If she developed a caring relationship, the more emotionally charged sexual experience would trigger the disturbing emotions while linking them to the sexual abuse, given that they surface during the sexual encounter. Even when feelings are associated with the trauma are re-experienced, they are not consciously linked to the cognitive components of the trauma that has given rise to them. Going back to my conversation, it was only when my friend was able to accept his trauma that he became conscious of his dysfunctional repetition. Overcoming repetition compulsion requires fundamentally awareness of our traumatic histories, our emotions, feelings, thoughts, actions, and behaviors. By staying aware in each moment and paying attention to what's going on for us, we can start to unravel our trauma. Importantly, our body and mind wants to heal. If we gently probe our painful thoughts, emotions, and feelings without activating a stress response, we will heal in time.